So in this segment, we're going to be talking about here we go again. UK prepared to unilaterally tear up Northern Ireland post-Brexit trade deal. So this is coming off the back of some turbulent time for Boris Johnson. These stories were reported around Friday, the 22nd of April, so not too long ago. I'll try and rush this one out as always. But yeah, not great for the UK as always. We can't be trusted, and when you look at the specific things Rees-Mogg says, it further highlights that any country that goes into some sort of agreement with the UK should be very nervous about doing deals with these charlatans. So the UK government is prepared to tear up the post-Brexit trade deal governing Northern Ireland. A senior minister in Boris Johnson's government has warned. Mogg, the Brexit Opportunities Minister, told a committee of MPs that if the EU didn't not reform the so-called Northern Ireland Protocol, then the UK government was within its right to take unilateral action, which isn't true at all. He just is this his statements are full of lies, and the EU have offered changes to the Northern Ireland Protocol. Some of those have been implemented, some haven't yet. The medicines thing being the most recent, I did drop the ball on that one, and I didn't have a chance to cover it. But there are concessions and changes being offered. It's just not as good as the command paper, which the UK are desperate for. We signed the protocol, on the basis it would be reformed. It's not true. Frost said at the time it was a great deal, so how are you going to claim now that you didn't know what you were voting for? Mogg said, and there comes a point where we say you haven't reformed it, which isn't true. They have reformed it, and therefore we are reforming it ourselves. Sure, if you want to spark a trade war, let's go then. It's going to happen at this point. In the middle of a cost of living crisis, you want to spark a trade war. Differences over the implementation of the protocol poisoned EU-UK relations since London left the bloc. It's not really differences of implementation. It's just the UK keep using this as an argument, despite the fact they can't really say what the issues are. They do talk about how some supermarkets only exist in Northern Ireland, and therefore, putting checks and paperwork on those products don't make sense. But you still need to do checks to know what products are going through. Otherwise, how do you know what they are? Like, oh yeah, this bread is going to Tesco's. Yeah, it's like, can we check it? No. It's ridiculous. The deal agreed by Johnson in October 2019, which wasn't that long ago. We're less than what, like 3 years from this thing. Created a trade board in the Irish Sea and left Northern Ireland following EU rules for goods trade, in order to avoid a return to a hard border on the island of Ireland, which is good. Keeps the Good Friday Agreement intact, despite what other people claim. Attempts to reach a negotiated settlement with the EU to soften the protocol have so far failed to make progress. That's predominantly because you put a bunch of clowns there. You put what's his name, man, Frost there, absolute clown, wanted to just saber rattle the whole time with the EU and turn it into a culture war. You've got Liz Truss there, who, yes, she's trying to appear very strong, but she's also the Foreign Secretary, and her remit is broad, and she has a lot of work she has to do. So even if the UK wanted to genuinely make progress on this, it'd be difficult because Liz Truss, A, intellectually isn't the strongest, and B, she has a lot of work to do. Attempts to reach a negotiated settlement, we mentioned that. Under the questioning from Brexit supporting MPs on the EU Scrutiny Committee, Mogg said the UK had the sovereign right to override the deal. Now, this is one of the arguments he makes, which is just ridiculous. He says the United Kingdom is much more important than any agreement we have with any foreign power. That must be the case. What if the United Kingdom said, well, we want to take back Ireland, we want Ireland to be part of the United Kingdom, therefore any agreement we made with Ireland, we can just overrule it. It took me a minute to figure out what the hell he's talking about here, but, the idea, should we go against international law then? Because the United Kingdom is more important than any agreement we have with any foreign power? Should we just get rid of a load of laws because the United Kingdom is more important than any agreement we have with any foreign power? Now, I kind of know what he's trying to say here, but the way he said it's really dumb. Mogg declined to provide details of the government's plans because they don't have any plans. This is just more saber-rattling by the looks of it. Citing the sensitivities of May's local elections in Northern Ireland, where the protocol has been rejected by all pro-UK unionist parties, but he added that wheels are in motion. But the simple fact is these unionist parties aren't going to do very well in the election, not compared to years gone by. Two Whitehall insiders with knowledge of government plans said ministers were exploring the possibility of creating the legal architecture to disapply key parts of the protocol in certain circumstances. Now, these bits here are very techy but very interesting. They talk about specific bits of the protocol they want to get rid of to avoid falling foul of UK law. They said that enabling powers to override the agreement could be used whether or not the government triggered Article 16 safeguard clause, which we've talked about ad nauseum in this channel. A government insider said the protocol was still not working. I mean, businesses in Northern Ireland might disagree with you there, some of them at least, and was causing real problems in Northern Ireland. The people causing problems in Northern Ireland are people like in the DUP and the Tory party who are constantly trying to agitate stuff in Northern Ireland. They said, we are exploring a range of options because this gridlock can't go on forever, but no decision has been made, and this is just more saber-rattling, in my opinion anyways. John Jones, QC, the UK's former top lawyer who resigned in 2020 at the government's attempts to unilaterally disapply the protocol, warned that any move to act unilaterally risks damaging EU-UK relations. The UK Parliament has the sovereign right to legislate under UK law to repudiate the protocol, but that would by definition put the UK in breach of its international obligations and raise the same questions about our commitment to international law and our relationship with the EU. So I think what he's saying is the UK, via Parliament, can get rid of the protocol to an extent. They can try and change legislation, of which they do talk about a bit more in this article. However, we will be in breach of international law, and this was a person who was the government's top lawyer, or at least a top lawyer for the government. Johnson's government has argued since July 21 that the threshold to trigger Article 16 has been reached, which I don't believe is the case, because if it was, they would have done it. But it's held off using the clause, saying it wants to seek a negotiated settlement, which they keep saying, but they don't do. They don't put the pieces in place to get it. Johnson has faced increasing pressure from the pro-Brexit right wing of the Tory party to trigger Article 16 and take steps to remedy what he sees as an intolerable intrusion into British sovereignty, which this is what the UK gave away to get Brexit done. That was it. The Northern Ireland Protocol was part of the withdrawal agreement. So, for them to argue that they care so much about Northern Ireland, it's not the case. So if it was, they would have kept the entirety of the UK in the single market until they came up with some sort of magical techno solution to stop a hard border in the island of Ireland. The government has argued that the protocol is damaging the 1998 Good Friday Agreement, which it's not. They talk about the need for kind of cross-border consensus and all these things, cross-community consensus, but they never asked anyone really about their opinions on Brexit, of how Brexit would damage unionism or Irish nationalism. They never did, because one of the reasons why I think the DUP voted for Brexit was to separate themselves from Ireland, but ironically, in some ways they're closer to Ireland than they are to GB. A UK spokesperson said, our overriding priority is protect peace and stability in Northern Ireland and protect the Good Friday Agreement despite being the ones to damage it the most. There's a lot more I wanted to talk about, so this might be a longish video if we see how long I've been going for. Yeah, it's going to be a long one. So this is from the great Tony Connolly, who does great stuff, and he doesn't write short articles, that's for sure. So he says the UK is ready to, quote, fix the Northern Ireland Protocol with the EU, says Boris Johnson. So this is from the 22nd of April. This is from Boris Johnson talking in New Delhi, saying we have to address that, we have to fix that, talking about the Northern Ireland Protocol. He says, we think we can do it with some very simple and reasonable steps. We have talked repeatedly to our friends and partners in the EU. We'll continue to talk to them, but he will act unilaterally if that doesn't happen. His comments come out after reporting the Financial Times, which we just spoke about. RTE News understands that the British government lawyers have been drafted legislation. Sorry, these are the most interesting bits here. Have drafted legislation that would repeal a key provision of the EU Withdrawal Act, which enshrines the Brexit Withdrawal Treaty, including the Northern Ireland Protocol in UK law. So they're looking at things they can get rid of in order not to fall foul of British law. So this is where it gets technical. By overturning Article 7A of the Act, ministers could then disapply parts of the protocol without facing actions in UK courts, because the Northern Ireland Protocol is a part of British law as well. This could include absolving the UK from carrying out checks on goods entering Northern Ireland from Britain, a key requirement of the protocol. So from what we can gather from that is the UK is doing its best not to fall foul of British law. However, because that would be awkward if it got struck down in the Supreme Court in the UK. So I think they'll be happy if this thing goes to the European Court of Justice, because that's when they can use their Brexity arguments, amongst other things. Such a move would be a clear breach of the Brexit treaty and international law. The Financial Times also reported that if the Stormont Assembly voted to keep the protocol in the consent vote in 24, UK ministers could disregard the outcome if this anticipated bill were to become law. And it shows you how anti-democratic these people are, that if the MLAs in Stormont vote to keep the Northern Ireland Protocol, right, the government would overrule them. How is that democratic? If the people voted into the to Stormont, right, which is the will of the Northern Irish people, they talk about democracy and all this stuff. How can you overrule the democratic will of the people of Northern Ireland? How? It doesn't make sense. The EU and Irish government are expected to be furious at this latest report, and I'll keep an eye on this stuff as best as I can. At this latest report move at a time when Europe is heavily preoccupied with the war in Ukraine and the associated energy and cost of living crises. A spokesperson for the European Commission said the UK was bound by the legal obligations of the withdrawal agreement, and said that only joint solutions could provide certainty to people and businesses in Northern Ireland. Because you've got to think to yourself, right, it has to go through the joint committee, because if it doesn't and the UK unilaterally gets rid of the Northern Ireland Protocol, right, but then, the TCA gets scrapped, so all of the stuff gets tariffed. Anything Northern Ireland wants to export would potentially face tariffs, depending on how it's figured out what's being exported from Northern Ireland. And at that point, you could have a real problem for Northern Ireland. We're going to talk about how Brexit has impacted the Falkland Islands in a couple of videos. You're talking 40% tariffs, etc. That same thing could impact Northern Ireland. And that would be, I think, far more damaging for Northern Ireland's businesses than the Northern Ireland Protocol ever would have been. A spokesperson for the European Commission said the UK was bound by the legal obligations of the withdrawal agreement, and said that only joint solutions can... I mentioned that, sorry. We are fully committed to working jointly with the UK government to find long-lasting solutions in Northern Ireland. This is Dan Ferry talking about the Financial Times report, saying only joint solutions can do that. Only joint solutions can do that. Jointly agreed solutions, that is. It's important to underline as well that our agreements, the withdrawal agreement, the protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland, are legal obligations. They said the EU had agreed changes to EU law in record time to ensure the free flow of medicines, which, again, for Rees-Mogg to argue the EU haven't made changes, simply untrue. Last October, he says, we came forward with a number of serious, wide-ranging solutions for Northern Ireland. We've been working on them, and our intention is to continue working on these solutions with the UK over the coming weeks. The West unites against Russia despite the Northern Ireland Protocol threat, and this is the thing which will divide the Western Alliance, because the Americans will be very, very interested to see what is going on in Northern Ireland. That's for sure. It comes as Vice President of the European Commission, Valdis Dombrovskis, said there is enough flexibility in the EU's approach to ensure the protocol is implemented as agreed. Asked if renewed British threats to disapply part or all of the Northern Ireland Protocol, possibly through legislative change, Dombrovskis said the EU had offered the British plenty of ways to make the protocol work. It's just the British never took it. We never took these agreements. Speaking in Washington, he said, it's interesting he is speaking in Washington. That's a thing to keep an eye on as well, given the Americans' kind of viewpoints on Ireland and Northern Ireland. So, speaking in Washington, from the EU side, we have shown lots of goodwill and lots of flexibility in proposing the UK's so-called bespoke arrangements on providing additional flexibilities and procedural easings in the implementation of the protocol. He made the remarks after a meeting with the US Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo, who largely dealt with the coordinated sanctions and export controls on Russia over its invasion of Ukraine. Now, there's a lot of interesting things here that we can pick apart. He's speaking in Washington, right, where a certain President Joe Biden may have been watching or would have been very interested in. No doubt Gina Raimondo will report back to President Biden. So that's the first interesting bit. The second interesting bit is Gina Raimondo, US Commerce Secretary, is a person who had to deal with the sanctions and export controls on Russia. So if the UK does scrap the Northern Ireland Protocol and does cause chaos in Northern Ireland, you got to think she's going to be one of the people very much involved in dealing with a response to the UK. Whether that's the President Joe Biden just sticking tariffs on UK goods where there wouldn't have been, or potential sanctions. It's very interesting that he's speaking to Gina Raimondo. That's for sure. These are the things to keep an eye on. Asked about the latest Brexit threats, Secretary Raimondo said, "At the point of time, we have an unprecedented level of cooperation and collaboration with the EU, and I think with the UK, we have aligned with such speed and determination to counter Putin's war and bring it to an end." And so I think that what you can hear loudly and clearly is that we're aligned like we've never been before in recent times, and we're going to continue to work together in the spirit of unity to stick up for our democratic values, the rule of law, and our shared values around freedom. And from kind of an American or EU perspective, this would be the worst time the UK could trigger Article 16. And I think from the UK's perspective, this could be the best time if they were going to scrap the protocol or anything, because of the amount of eyes on Russia and the amount of kind of problems that this would cause if the UK decided to act now. I'm not saying the UK should do this. I would rather go through joint committees, amongst other things. But, if the UK are going to do this, if I was in the British government, I'd be like, if you're going to pull the trigger on this one, I would do it soon. I would do it sharpish. But, I hope they don't do this. I really hope they don't. You've got Jennifer Cassidy from Oxford University saying, Jacob Rees-Mogg quote, "The UK is much more important than any agreement with any foreign power." She says, "The Irish know how important you think the UK is. We've known it for about 800 years. Good luck any country trusting you again in a negotiation," which is true, because Simon Coveney said the same thing, about Rees-Mogg's statement about the protocol being reformed, blah, blah, blah. He said, "And some wonder why trust is in short supply," which is true. The protocol was never negotiated on the basis that it would be reformed later on. Not as far as I know of anyways. If I'm wrong, then feel free to correct me, but as far as I know of, it's not the case. Finally, you've got the British government talking about how, denying a Northern Ireland Protocol override would break international law as Labour attacks damaging reported plan. There's nothing really new in this, apart from some Labour quotes where they call these actions astonishing. But, what we can gather from this very long, probably 20-minute video, near 20 minutes, is that the UK seem closer and closer to acting on getting rid of the Northern Ireland Protocol, at least making reforms to it unilaterally to avoid the British courts. So if we look at this, right, 7A, by overturning Article 7A of the Act, ministers could then disapply parts of the protocol without facing action in UK courts, and that in orange is the key for, I think, British ministers trying to do their best to avoid the British courts. The main issue they have is they've got Suella Braverman advising them, and she's not the smartest person in the world, considering she thought we would get some sort of windfall from the European Investment Bank, but Boris Johnson gave that up, so that was never going to happen. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. A cabinet full of British exceptionalism has come back to haunt us. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.